In 1917, when the frost ate through wool coats and the Great War carved more graves than names, our trench, officially logged as 22B, sat on a stretch of no man's land that the maps insisted was stable ground. Though any man who slept there knew better, the mud in that sector was thick as lard and colder than marrow, swallowing boots up to the ankle and refusing to let go without a fight. But that wasn't what unnerved us. What unsettled even the veterans, those hollow-eyed bastards who'd survived the Somme and Verdun, was that the trench never seemed to stay in the same damned place. It didn't jump miles or anything dramatic. No, it shifted like a sleepwalker, moving inches at a time. Subtle, creeping, wrong. One morning the northern wall would lean toward the ruined oaks. The next it would tilt toward the ridge. Landmarks nudged themselves like someone had rearranged the whole battlefield while we slept. At first we chalked it up to exhaustion, frozen rations, nerves stretched thin. But then the compasses started spinning, and the measurements between sandbags never matched the day before. Something beneath the earth was moving, and it was dragging us with it. The first real disappearance happened the night Corporal Henley drew the cot closest to what we called the breathing wall. It was a stretch of timber and sandbags stained darker than the rest, always damp even when the rain stopped. Henley kept saying it bowed inward like something was pressing from the other side. But we shrugged him off. Nerves, cold, trench talk. That night the temperature plummeted so hard our lantern flames shrank into trembling needles, and the ground beneath us vibrated in slow pulses, like a giant heartbeat echoing through the play. Around midnight I heard a soft groan from the inner wall, the kind timber makes when it's being bent. Henley muttered something about the trench inhaling again, then drifted off. By morning he was gone, not missing in action, not taken during a raid, just gone. His blanket lay neatly folded, his boots aligned with parade ground precision, his rifle propped against the wall as if waiting for him to come back from a stroll. But the mud outside the trench was untouched, smooth as if freshly poured. No footprints, no drag marks, no panic. The lieutenant insisted he must have wandered out to relieve himself and lost his bearings. But even he avoided looking directly at the inner wall when he said it. The wall bulged slightly, the shape of the earth behind it swollen like a bruise, or, God help me, a knuckle pushing through. After that, no one wanted to sleep within 5 feet of the breathing wall. But command didn't care about our superstitions. Those with shifts closest to it left their lanterns burning until dawn, shadows jittering across the timber like insects under a microscope. You could swear the wall pulsed sometimes, tightening, loosening, like lungs filling and emptying. One night, Private Malloy, shaky kid from Manchester, barely 20, came back from watch pale as morning fog. He said he'd seen the trench stretch. I asked him to explain, and what he described made my scalp tighten. According to him, the entire line of sandbags near the southern bend had rippled forward, sliding several feet like a massive worm burrowing. I thought he was delirious until sunrise when we walked the line and found that the external markers, sticks we'd placed in the mud the night before, now sat 30 feet behind where they should have been. The trench had advanced toward the enemy line during the night, not by inches but yards, with no sound, no effort, no collapse, no evidence of shoveling. 40 grown men with rifles and nerves shot to hell had slept through their entire world-shifting position, like chess pieces moved by unseen hands. It was around this time that the ground beneath us began making noises, quiet at first, like the distant thrum of artillery, except deeper, slower, rhythmic. The vibrations traveled under our boots, rising through the soles like a soft knock. Some nights it sounded like something dragging itself through tunnels far beneath the clay, passing directly under the trench, pausing beneath the cots of the men closest to the breathing wall. On those nights, the mud seemed to rise in subtle bulges, as if something large pressed upward before drifting away. The lieutenant dismissed it as settling earth, but even he started burning his pipe out entirely before sleep, his hands trembling just enough for me to notice. One night, while the sky glowed dull red from distant shell fire, I was certain I heard footsteps, slow, deliberate, impossibly heavy, moving beneath the boards. Not the shuffle of rats or the slosh of water. Something bipedal, something that understood the layout above it, something choosing where to step. By the end of January, the maps were useless. Every day the scouts reported different distances to the ridge, different positions of the crater fields, even different angles to the front line. It was as if we were drifting across the landscape in tiny increments, moving without marching, marching without knowing. Some of the men believed the war itself was twisting the land, as if all the blood and explosions had broken the ground's memory. Others said older things lived here, things buried long before we arrived, awakened by the constant shaking of artillery. I didn't know which to believe, but my certainty crumbled the night I saw the inner wall move. Not collapse, not sag, move. The timber swelled outward as if pushed from inside, and for a second, just a second, I saw the outline of something behind the sandbags, something tall, something with joints that bent wrong. And then it stepped back into the earth, and the wall sagged into place like nothing had happened. I didn't sleep the rest of that night. None of us did. That was when we understood the truth we'd been avoiding. The trench wasn't breaking down. It wasn't shifting because of rain or bombardment or poor engineering. We were being moved, shifted, herded. Something beneath the mud was dragging our entire defensive line, inch by inch, night after night, to a place only it understood. And every time someone slept too close to the breathing wall, that something took a little more than land. It took men. By February, the trench had developed a personality, or at least that's how it felt to the men living inside it. It groaned when the temperature changed. It shivered when the artillery rolled across the horizon. And it breathed when the night deepened past the hour when sane men stayed awake. We stopped pretending it was the same stretch of mud and timber each dawn. Every sunrise brought a dozen new arguments. Men swearing the bend to the north used to be steeper, others insisting the duckboards felt shorter, some claiming the angle of the firing step had rotated toward the enemy, like a compass needle twitching toward a magnet buried beneath the clay. The lieutenant tried to keep morale together with inspections and duty rotations, but even he couldn't ignore the disturbing truth that our trench wasn't behaving like a fixed structure. It was reacting, adapting, shifting around us as if adjusting itself to fit something moving underneath. The breathing wall had grown more pronounced. Some nights it pulsed visibly, pushing outward, just enough for the lantern flames to quiver with each slow exhale. No one wanted to sleep near it, and the few who had to rotate through that position slept like prisoners, eyes half open, rifles clutched to their chests, as if the timber might peel back at any moment and reveal whatever pressed from the other side. The second disappearance happened during a night patrol, not on the front, but within our own trench. Private Waxler, a quiet farm boy from Devon, who rarely spoke above a mutter, was walking the communication line, checking the wire, when he simply stopped responding. The runner sent to fetch him found his helmet lying on the duckboards and the wire pliers resting beside it, but Waxler himself was nowhere. The mud bore no print deeper than a ranger. The snow had stopped 4 hours earlier, and the sky was clear enough to see our breath drifting like ghosts. Yet there were no signs, no struggle, no drag marks, no movement beyond the delicate frost settling across wood and steel. It was as if Waxler had been erased, not removed. The lieutenant called it desertion, but nobody believed that. Patrick Waxler barely dared piss without permission, let alone flee a trench that seemed determined to swallow its occupants. What chilled us more was the discovery that the section of trench where he vanished was several feet farther south than it had been during evening roll call. The landmarks no longer matched. What had once been a straight run, now slanted. The whole line had migrated during the hours we stood guard. We tested it again the following night, laid out stakes, drew lines across the duckboards, marked the I drew with the angles and marking the spot. When I drew with the angles by which is fallen, it was like waking on a ship that had drifted while the crew slept, except we were anchored in mud thick enough to trap a horse. We tried digging outward to confirm if the trench was actually moving, or if the land itself was twisting around us, but we didn't make it 2 feet before we struck something strange. Soil that wasn't soil, clay that throbbed faintly when touched with a shovel. It felt warm, alive. One of the men swore it recoiled from the blade, like muscle remembering pain. The lieutenant ordered us to stop digging, but the damage was done. Everyone who touched that warm patch began feeling it beneath their boots even when standing elsewhere. They claimed the ground vibrated, different rhythms depending on where you stood. 3 slow pulses near the southern sector, 2 longer ones near the ridge, and beneath the breathing wall. Raid had no idea where he was coming, and the men had been acting for our fate.
A constant faint thud like a heart beating several feet below the boards. Soon the men began calling it the thing under, half as a joke, half because no other explanation made sense anymore. And the more the trench moved, the more that name stopped being a joke. One night, when the fog rolled in thick enough to choke a lantern beam, something happened that I still see when I close my eyes. It was well past midnight, the hour when the mug sweats cold and the sky feels close enough to scratch.
A distant barrage boomed somewhere to the east, echoing across the valley like a giant coughing. The trench shuddered with each impact, But then came a tremor that didn't match the artillery. Slower, heavier, deliberate. The boards beneath our boots quivered. The breathing wall bulged. We froze, rifles raised, waiting for the collapse we'd been expecting for weeks. But instead, the entire inner wall, timber, sandbags, reinforcing boards, pressed outward in one long, unnatural stretch, a full 2 feet before snapping back into place like elastic released. It didn't break, didn't crack, it flexed. Wood and sandbags do not flex. The lanterns flickered violently. Shadows sprawled like claws across the rolls. And we heard a sound, low, resonant, not quite a moan, not quite a growl. Something between stone shifting and an animal exhaling. It vibrated through the timber and rattled our teeth. Malloy broke first. He shoved past us, scrambling down the trench, yelling that he saw an arm pushing through the wall. I didn't see an arm, but I did see movement behind the sandbags, shapes shifting like silhouettes pressed behind canvas, long limbs bending at dislocated angles, something large turning slowly, as if deciding whether to push harder. For a moment the wall swelled again, and I swear to God the outline of a head, elongated, misshapen, pressed forward as if trying to peer into the trench. Then the pressure eased, the shape withdrew, the breathing wall fell still, and the fog swallowed everything. By dawn the trench had moved again, this time dramatically. The northern sector had shifted nearly 20 yards, curling like a finger toward a crater we'd never approached before. The communication dugout had rotated so subtly that the door now faced west instead of south. And beneath Waxler's abandoned helmet, still resting where we found it, the mud was firmer, smoother, as though something broad had slid beneath it and pressed upward during the night. We found new bulges along the walls too, fresh swellings of damp timber that hadn't been there the day before. The lieutenant tried to keep it together, handing out rations, ordering weapon inspections, pretending none of us were watching the ground like it might peel open beneath our boots. But even he broke when we found Henley's dog tag half buried in the inner wall, embedded deep, as if the wall itself had swallowed it and spat it back out. He didn't say a word, just stared at it long enough for the men to see the fear he'd been hiding. That morning, as the frost melted into sludge and the sky turned the color of gunmetal, I understood something with absolute certainty. Whatever lay beneath us wasn't just moving the trench, it was observing us, testing the boundaries, learning our patterns. The shifts weren't random, they were purposeful, designed, a slow tightening spiral pulling us toward a point we hadn't yet recognized. And if we didn't understand its intent soon, the next man to vanish into the moving earth wouldn't be taken quietly, he'd be taken screaming. By the first week of March, the trench felt less like a fortification and more like a living corridor, an esophagus carved through mud and timber, tightening and loosening around us, as if deciding when to swallow. Sleep became impossible. Men dozed for minutes at a time, rifles propped beneath their chins, boots half-laced, eyes flicking to the inner wall with every creak. The breathing had grown louder, no longer a whisper beneath the boards, but a steady pulse, a slow rhythm that synchronized with the tremors traveling through the ground. Some nights it beat fast, like excitement. Other nights it slowed to a crawl, a massive thing conserving energy. What terrified us most was how the trench now reacted to our presence. If a man stood still too long near the bulging timber, the wall pushed outward a fraction, as if sniffing him, as if tasting the space between him and the earth behind it. The lieutenant ordered us to rotate positions every 20 minutes, just so no one stayed near the breathing wall long enough for it to grow curious. But fear doesn't obey orders. The men avoided that section like it was cursed, and the more we avoided it, the more it seemed to swell at night, like a hunger growing, waiting for someone to slip up. The third disappearance happened in broad daylight. Private Renner, a tall, quiet fellow from Liverpool who had survived 2 offenses by sheer luck, was assigned to straighten collapsed sandbags along the inner bend. The sun, thin and weak behind the smoke-laden sky, cast enough light to make the trench feel almost normal for a moment. Renner joked about requesting a transfer to a non-haunted trench, earning a few nervous laughs. He knelt to adjust a torn sandbag, tugged it into place, and then the wall pressed outward, fast, violent, deliberate. The bulge slammed into him with a rut thud, pinning him against the opposite wall so hard his helmet rang like a church bell. Before any of us reached him, the timber sucked inward, dragging him through a gap no wider than a boot heel. Renner screamed once, a desperate ripping sound, and then he vanished beyond the sandbags, his fingers scraping grooves into the boards as he was pulled through. Every man within earshot froze. No one moved, no one fired. By the time we tore the wall apart with shovels and bayonets, the space behind it was solid earth. No opening, no void, just mud packed so tight it might as well have been stone. But Renner's glove, torn, still wet, lay embedded in the clay like a fossil. After that, the trench no longer hid its movements. The next morning we woke to find the entire western corridor had curved inward, bending toward the communication line as if forming an elbow. The duckboards were tilted at a new angle, and the firing step now pointed toward a crater we hadn't seen in months. Mallory climbed a ladder for a better look, then scrambled back down pale as paper. The whole trench had shifted at least 50 yards overnight, closer to the enemy line, closer to the low ridge we'd been avoiding, closer to the cluster of bombed-out farmhouses locals swore were cursed. We tried reporting the shift, but every attempt at signal communication was met with static so heavy it vibrated in the earpiece. The wires hummed like they were strung across the belly of some enormous beast. Even the carrier pigeons refused to fly. They fluttered madly in their cages, smashing their wings against the bars until one broke its own neck. That afternoon, Sergeant Brayton ordered us to map the trench manually, hoping to identify a pattern in the movements. We measured distances between firing bays, between the duckboards and the parapet, between the ridge and our northern post. The numbers made no sense. What should have been 60 feet measured as 32. What should have been a straight 20-yard run, now angled like a broken len. And when we remeasured the same region an hour later, the distances were already different. The land wasn't shifting uniformly. It was flowing, sliding, contracting, expanding, like something massive beneath us was rolling over, bringing the trench with it. At sunset, Brayton and I discovered something worse. A fissure had appeared near the southern bend, a deep crack running several feet along the trench floor. It wasn't a shell impact. It wasn't erosion. It was an opening. Soft air drifted from it, warm like breath. When Brayton knelt to inspect it, a crack widened with a slow groan. Something moved in the darkness below, something he described later as a ripple, like skin stretching over bone. I hauled him back before he could lean closer, and a second later the fissure snapped shut, sealing as cleanly as pressing two sides of dough together. But I saw the truth. Beneath that crack was not soil, it was a membrane. As night fell, the ground began trembling again, not the distant rumble of artillery, but a slow rolling quake that came from directly beneath us. Men dropped to their knees, grabbing the sandbags for balance. The lanterns swung wildly, shadows slicing across the walls like claws. The breeding wall pulsed in long, heaving motions, expanding and contracting like a giant lung struggling against its own confinement. The boards creaked, the sandbags shifted, and then, in the middle of the tremor, a voice, no, not a voice, a sound, rose through the timber. A deep, resonant thrum that vibrated through our ribs and made every hair on my body stand on end. It wasn't language, it wasn't noise. It was a call, a signal, a slow, dragging hum that felt like it was meant for whatever lived beneath the trench, not for us. The men panicked. Some fired blindly into the wall. Some tried to climb out, only to be shoved back by the lieutenant screaming they'd be mowed down by enemy guns. Malloy curled into a ball, walking and muttering that it's waking up over and over. The tremor intensified. The timber groaned so loudly it sounded like a tree being split by lightning. And then, just as suddenly as it began, the shaking stopped. The wall exhaled one final time, a long, trembling sigh that carried the stink of warm earth and something older, rot, but not from anything human. When the silence settled, the trench was different again. The angles had sharpened, the corridors narrowed, the breathing wall bulged like a swollen artery ready to burst. And at the southern end, where Renner had vanished earlier, we found a new imprint pressed into the timber, a handprint, but not a human one. Too long, too narrow, fingers tapering into points. No palm, just ridges, like the underside of something that crawls in the dark. That night, none of us slept. That night, we realized the truth. The thing under wasn't moving the trench randomly. It was shaping it, building a path, preparing something. For several minutes after the figures melted into the snow, none of us moved. The convoy sat in a tight defensive arc, rifles raised, headlights cutting narrow tunnels of light into the storm. But the world ahead of us was empty, clean, too clean. Not a single footprint, not a tire track, not even a disturbance in the drifts where an entire mirrored convoy had just sunk. The snow swirled untouched, as if erasing the last 5 minutes of our lives. Hensley kept scanning through his NVG, muttering under his breath, No heat, no motion, nothing. Like they were never here. But that wasn't true. We felt them. Every man standing in that cold, every breath, every heartbeat stood witness to something that shouldn't have existed on any map, training program, or earthly place. The storm pressed harder against us, wind screeching over the flats like a warning. Lieutenant Barlow finally broke the silence. All units, mount up. We're turning around. His voice had lost its military stiffness. What came out was a tone I had never heard from him before. A quiet, controlled fear. We're heading back to Donnelly. Now, his words crackled through the radios. No one argued. No one even acknowledged. We simply began moving. Boots stopped snow, doors slammed, engines revved. I climbed into my Humvee with Hensley, my hands still shaking so badly I fumbled the door latch twice. When I finally sat down, the cab felt too small, too tight. The cold crept under my vest, gnawing with long teeth. The convoy rolled out, tires crunching on ice, headlights flickering against blowing snow. I scanned the side mirrors constantly, half expecting to see a second set of lights drifting behind us. But the landscape was pitch black, except for the whiteout. Clouds of powdery snow rose with each gust, curling like hands reaching across the tundra. Barlow's voice broke through the radio again. Stay tight on my 6. No gaps, no deviations. We keep moving until we hit the service road. His breathing clipped through the channel. Short, harsh exhales he tried and failed to hide. I don't want to see any shapes out there. Copy? We all copied. None of us believed the storm was empty. 20 minutes passed like an eternity. The storm worsened. Visibility dropped to barely 2 truck lengths. The world narrowed into a tunnel of blowing white, the edges alive with shifting shadows that danced at the edges of perception. Snow swept sideways in sheets, and the cold gnawed into the Humvee even with the heater warring. Suddenly, Webb's voice cut in sharply. Lieutenant, I've got movement on my right. Multiple contacts. Barlow tensed. Human? Animal? I don't. Webb inhaled sharply. Sir, they're walking in formation. My blood turned to ice. I leaned toward the windshield, squinting into the blur, and then I saw them too. Dark shapes marching in parallel with us, half concealed by the storm. At first, they looked like tall drifts rolling with the wind, but then one of them turned its head sharply toward us, the motion jerking like something rehearsed but unfinished. The figures matched our speed, matched our spacing, matched our formation. Hensley whispered, "Not again, please not again." Lieutenant Barlow's voice cracked. "Do not engage. Eyes forward. Maintain course." He said it with authority, but fear leaked through every syllable. The shapes drifted closer. 20 yards. 15. 10. Their outlines sharpened. Humanoid but stretched. Made of flickering snow and shadow, like unfinished sketches of people that the storm kept erasing and redrawing. Each time their shapes softened, they came back clearer, more like us, more familiar. Then one of them tapped its chest with 2 long fingers. Tap, tap, tap. My gorge rose. My pulse hammered. I knew that rhythm in my bones now, the way I know my own heartbeat. Suddenly the radio hissed. A low clicking came through. Soft, metallic, timed perfectly with our engine rotations. It worked into a whisper, like a voice speaking through a tunnel of ice. Connor, my name. Hensley jerked toward me. Did you hear that? Before I could answer, the spare radio handset, mounted on the dash and disconnected from any power, crackled to life, glowing faintly through a dead battery. A distorted version of my own voice seeped through, stretched and hollow. Connor, stop the engine. I recoiled like the dashboard had burned me. No, I'm not listening to whatever that is. The storm howled louder, as if responding. The figures outside drifted closer, brushing their hands across the snow in perfect sync. The nearest one's head turned sharply toward our Humvee, and I felt, truly felt, its hollow sockets lock onto me through the blizzard. Lieutenant, Webb shouted. They're closing in. I gripped the wheel harder until the leather dug into my gloves. The convoy accelerated. Engines roared. Tires spun. Snow blasted behind us in thick, twisting plumes. But the figures kept pace effortlessly, gliding across the ice as though friction didn't apply to them. Half-mile to the service road, Barlow yelled, "Push, push!" The storm slammed into us harder, a wall of white trying to shove us back. My Humvee fishtailed once, corrected, skidded again. The clicking from the radio grew faster, irregular, desperate. Something thumped against the rear panel of our vehicle, hard enough that the metal buckled inwards. Hensley gasped. "Something's behind us." I looked in the side mirror. A tall, shadowy shape leaned against the Humvee's rear quarter, fingers dragging across the metal without leaving prints. Its head was inches from the glass. Then it looked up, and its face shimmered into mine. "Connor," it whispered, voice vibrating through the mirror as though it came from inside the glass. "Lieutenant," I shouted, panic ripping through my chest. There, before I could finish, the storm parted like a torn curtain. A black stretch of road cut through the white, the service road. Salvation. "Go," Barlow screamed. "Go now." We broke from the snowfield, tires slamming onto asphalt with a shudder. The unnatural figures halted at the edge of the ice. Their shapes wavered, their outlines crumpled, and one by one they folded into the storm and vanished. The clicking on the radio ceased. The mirror cleared. The storm behind us swallowed the plane's whole. Barlow finally exhaled into the mic, breath shaking. "Convoy, continue to Greeley. No stops, no radio chatter. No one argued, no one spoke." And as we rolled down the lonely stretch of road, the last thing I saw, just for a moment in the rear view, was the identical convoy reappearing at the storm's edge, silent, still, watching us leave. The service road should have felt like safety, a hard line carved through the wilderness, something solid beneath our tires after miles of shifting ice. But the further we drove, the more it felt like a tunnel, a narrow gray corridor where the mountains pressed in and the storm stalked behind us like a living thing. The men stayed silent, not disciplined silence, haunted silence. The kind that settles in a squad only after something has broken their sense of reality so deeply they no longer trust speech. Even the engine noise sounded wrong, like it carried faint echoes of another convoy revving beside us in perfect synchronization. I kept glancing at the mirrors, terrified I'd see that impossible formation trailing just behind the storm wall. Every few minutes, I swore I caught a shape, a flicker of headlights, the silhouette of a Humvee. But when I blinked, it was gone. Hensley sat rigid in the passenger seat, hands gripping his rifle so tightly his knuckles were bone white. "Connor," he whispered suddenly, barely audible over the hum of the road. What if they're not gone? What if they're just waiting?" His voice cracked on the last word. Hensley wasn't a coward. I'd watched him walk into gunfire without hesitation. But this wasn't something a soldier could fight with bullets or courage. Whatever we saw out there didn't fear us, didn't need to chase us. It simply observed. And I had the sickening feeling that was exactly what it wanted us to know. I didn't answer, couldn't, because deep down the same fear gnawed at me. Those things weren't driven off. We had been released, allowed to leave. And anything that chooses to let you go can choose not to next time. Lieutenant Barlow's voice crackled through the radio, low and tight, like he was forcing the words through trembling teeth. "Convoy, maintain spacing, eyes forward. We're 20 minutes from Greeley checkpoint." He paused, then added something I'd never heard an officer say on open comms. "Do not look behind you unless I say otherwise." The channel clicked off, leaving a cold silence that hit harder than the wind outside. Hensley nodded in a small, frightened way. "He knows," he muttered. "He knows they're still there." I kept my eyes fixed straight ahead, but my peripheral vision betrayed me. Shadows shifted along the snowbanks, darting just out of direct sight. The storm behind us hadn't collapsed. Instead, it followed at a fixed distance, a swirling white wall that matched our speed exactly, like a curtain being pulled across the road, never closer, never further. And from inside it, shapes pressed against the storm front, tall shapes, familiar shapes. The truck ahead of us fishtailed suddenly. A soldier burst through the radio with a cry. "They're on the snowbank! Left side, left side!" His voice cut out abruptly, replaced by harsh static. Barlow snapped, "Keep driving! Do not stop that vehicle!" But the damage was done. Every man in the convoy turned his head instinctively, drawn by reflex, by human weakness, by the need to confirm the danger behind them. And so did I, only for a second, but long enough. In the mirror, the storm wall bulged outward, like something massive pressed forward from behind it. A second later, a distorted version of our entire convoy emerged through the blizzard, headlights glowing a muted yellow, tires skimming over snow without sinking, soldiers inside rigid and unmoving, like mannequins strapped upright in their seats. The lead Humvee's windshield reflected my own headlights perfectly, too perfectly, as if it were a photographic negative of our vehicle. And in the passenger seat of the mirrored version of my Humvee sat a shape wearing my silhouette. Same jacket, same posture, same head tilt, but its face was blank, like ice had been sculpted into the vague suggestion of features. The eyes were just pits of frost, yet somehow it felt like it was smiling, not at me, into me. I jerked my head forward, gasping. Hensley grabbed my arm. "Did you see it, Connor? Tell me you saw." "Eyes forward," Barlow roared over the radio. "Anyone looks again, I'll court-martial you myself." His voice cracked on the last word, Betraying terror he was no longer trying to hide. The road twisted between two frozen ridges, and for a moment, cover blocked the storm from view. I exhaled shakily, shoulders dropping an inch. But relief died in my chest when the radio clicked again, not with Barlow's voice, but with a faint hollow whisper, my whisper, from the dead reserve handset on the dash. Connor, slower. I nearly swerved off the road. Hensley slapped the dash, knocking the dead radio to the floor. The whisper sputtered, warped, then intensified like something was pressing closer to the microphone. Let us pass. The line went dead. No one spoke after that. No one needed to. We drove in suffocating silence until the first checkpoint lights glimmered through the storm. As soon as the towers came into view, the blizzard behind us collapsed into normal snow, the storm wall dissipating like dust scattered by wind. The phantom convoy vanished with it. No lights, no shapes, no trace. We rolled into the checkpoint trembling, frostbitten, breathless. Soldiers stared at us like we were ghosts. Maybe we were. But the real horror didn't hit until the next morning, when the motor pool clerk checked our mileage logs. Our convoy had arrived with twice the number of vehicles we left with, and half of them had no drivers. When the motor pool clerk told us the numbers didn't add up, none of us understood at first. We were too exhausted, too numb, too grateful to be someplace with lights, heat, and walls that didn't move. But when he read the figures again, slowly this time, every man in our squad felt the room shift under his boots. You left Donnelly with 8 vehicles, he said, frowning at the clipboard. You arrived at Greeley with 16. 16. The word hung in the air like a curse. Hensley leaned in, eyes hollow. Check it again, he murmured. Check the plates, the VINs, something. But the clerk already had, line by line, serial by serial, 16 entries, all matching our fleet numbers, all registered as entering the gate, all recorded by motion sensors at the checkpoint. The part that froze my blood wasn't the count, it was the wording on the log. Under driver identification, half the entries were blank, no face, no ID, no body cam, no heat signature, just vehicle passed, no driver detected. Lieutenant Barlow dismissed the clerk and ordered every man in our convoy to the briefing room. His voice was tight with quiet rage, the kind of rage born not from anger, but from terror being held down by military discipline. When the door shut, he gripped the metal table so hard his knuckles went bloodless. What we saw out there, he began, voice low, does not leave this room. No one argued. No one wanted to speak of it anyway. The walls felt too thin, the lights too dim, the windows too open. Whatever followed us, Barlow continued, it is not our job to understand it. It is our job to complete our mission and submit our report. He tried to sound in control, but his hand shook. If anyone mentions duplicates, shadows, mirrored vehicles, anything, you will be removed from this unit and sent for psychiatric evaluation. Webb swallowed hard. Sir, with respect, we did bring extra vehicles. They're in the lot right now. The lieutenant didn't respond. He only stared at the far wall, as if afraid to turn around and confirm whether the phantom fleet was truly sitting outside, waiting for us. A cold wind pressed against the windows, making the glass tremble. A draft crawled under the door like a searching fingertip. I felt it slide across my boots. We were inside, but not safe, not separated, not anymore. Hours later, after officers were summoned, after technicians rushed outside to inspect the vehicles, after the base quietly locked down the entire motor pool, we were finally released to quarters. Sleep was out of the question. The barracks were warm, but not comforting. Every shadow seemed too tall. Every reflection felt like it lingered a second too long. I lay in my bunk with my boots still on, listening to the hum of the heater and the faint groans of the building settling in the cold. Hensley sat upright on his bed, staring at the window. The glass was fogging in a strange pattern, an imprint, like someone exhaling slowly from the outside. I whispered to him to lie down, but he didn't respond. He just pointed. Outside in the snow were footprints, perfectly spaced, perfectly aligned, leading straight toward our building, then stopping. No body, no drag marks, just footprints ending at the wall, as if something had walked directly up to the window and stood there, watching. My scalp prickled, my tongue stuck to the roof of my mouth. I couldn't move for a full 10 seconds. Then the hallway light flicked on outside our room. Someone walked past. I stood, relieved, until I heard the footsteps stop, then reverse, slowly, deliberately. The door's shadow darkened. Hensley's breath hitched. A knuckle tapped the door, just once, then again. Tap, tap, tap. The same pattern those things used in the snow. I shot up, reached the door, and wrenched it open, ready to confront whoever or whatever was playing games. But the hallway was empty. Cold air washed over my face. No footprints, no sounds, nothing. But down the hall, I saw something that rooted me where I stood. A shape turning the corner. My shape.
Same height, same haircut. Hey. Oh, love me. I have more time.
Same jacket hanging from its shoulders, but its head tilted too far to the side, as if studying me with invisible frost-filled eyes. I slammed the door shut. By morning, half the phantom vehicles were gone without tire tracks. Plane vanished, like they had sunk back into the earth. The officers questioned us separately for hours. Some of the men broke down. Some refused to speak. Some spoke too much and were escorted away by MPs. The official report came out 2 days later. Severe weather anomaly, visual distortion, equipment malfunction, human misinterpretation, a lie printed in bold ink, and we were ordered to sign it. But the truth didn't end at Greeley. In the days that followed, strange things continued happening across the base. Reflections that didn't match the person casting them. Engines warming on their own. A Humvee alarm screaming at 3 a.m. meters with nobody inside. Soldiers swore they saw duplicates of themselves walking into buildings they were never near. One mechanic quit on the spot after a vehicle he was inspecting whispered his name in his own voice. Whatever we saw out there in the Arctic, it followed us home. And every night since, when I lie awake in the barracks, I swear I hear it again. The faint sound of footsteps approaching my door, and a tapping that doesn't belong to anything human. For the next 72 hours, the base turned into something between a lockdown and a quarantine zone. MPs guarded the motor pool like it was a crime scene. Technicians wearing lead-lined gloves and radiation masks inspected our remaining vehicles, only to retreat in confusion when none of the engines showed signs of fuel consumption. It was as if some of the Humvees had simply appeared on base already warm, already humming with power, without ever driving a mile. Rumors spread fast, but not fast enough to outrun what we saw firsthand. Men started reporting strange flickers in their dorm hall mirrors, where the reflections lagged behind by a heartbeat. One soldier swore he saw himself walking into the shower room, only to realize he was still lying in bed half awake. Another claimed he'd heard someone climbing the stairs behind him, matching his pace perfectly, but when he turned around, the stairwell was empty. The officers dismissed it as stress, altitude fatigue, or Arctic winter hallucinations. But the men who'd been out there, the men who'd seen the duplicate convoy emerge from the blizzard, we knew better. Something had followed us in, something that copied. By the fourth night, the barracks no longer felt like shelter, they felt like traps. The walls seemed thinner, the windows rattled even when the wind outside was dead still. I barely slept, drifting in and out of short, jagged dreams, where the doubled versions of us walked in circles around the convoy, tapping their chests, learning our shapes like a child learns a puzzle. When morning came, the unease in my chest didn't fade. Hensley looked worse. He hadn't slept at all. Purple rings clung under his eyes, and his hand shook each time he tried to drink water. "Connor," he whispered, as the sun struggled to pierce the frosted windows, "it's not done with us." I asked why he thought that, but he didn't answer. He just stared at the window again, at the faint condensation forming on the glass. It wasn't random fog this time. It was a pattern, a shape. 3 soft prints, perfectly round, pressed into the frost from the outside. Tap, tap, tap. I lurched to the window, wiped it with my sleeve, and stared into the vast white expanse beyond the base. Nothing moved. No footprints, no tracks. Just a flat plain of untouched snow. We were summoned to the operations center an hour later. A colonel none of us recognized stood at the front of the room, surrounded by 2 CO.AG agents and a small stack of sealed folders bearing red stripes. He wasted no time, no pleasantries. "Gentlemen," he said, his voice cold and practiced, "you will never speak of what occurred during Convoy Delta 7's mission. You did not encounter duplicates. You did not witness shape anomalies. You did not observe unauthorized vehicles entering Fort Greely. What you saw was a meteorological refraction event combined with hypothermic disorientation." Webb scoffed under his breath. The colonel's eyes snapped toward him. "Say something, Sergeant." Webb shook his head, but everyone in the room felt the tension, like the colonel wasn't warning us, but begging us. Whatever followed us, the brass didn't want it investigated. They wanted it erased, wished it had never appeared. Then one of the OSI agents stepped forward, holding up a tablet. On the screen was grainy security footage, black and white, time-stamped flickering, of our convoy entering the checkpoint. First 8 vehicles, then 8 more, all identical, all rolling through the gate in silence. And then something impossible. One of the phantom Humvees flickered on the camera, its image bending like heat distortion. The vehicle dissolved into static for a split second, then snapped back into shape, except its headlights glowed black, not white, as if it absorbed light instead of projecting it. No driver, no movement inside, just a hollow shell wearing the shape of a truck. The CO.AG agent paused the footage and looked at us. "What you experienced is classified under Tier 5 phenomena," he said. "It does not fall under your training, jurisdiction, or clearance." Tier 5. I'd never heard of it. Neither had anyone else. After the briefing, we were ordered to pack our belongings. Reassignments were issued on the spot. No two men were sent to the same base. They scattered us across the country. Texas, Florida, Colorado, Kansas, like we were evidence being buried in different graveyards. Hensley pulled me aside as we left the building. "That thing," he whispered. "The one wearing your face in the snow. I saw it again last night, in the hallway, only for a second. And, Connor, I think it's learning faster." I tried to reassure him, but deep down I felt the truth of it pressing in my bones. Whatever we'd seen wasn't a storm anomaly or hallucination. It was curious. It observed, followed, mimicked, and now it had access to an entire military base's worth of shapes, voices, and faces. When the escort truck dropped me at the airport the next morning, I felt a cold sensation crawling up the back of my neck. I turned slowly. Across the parking lot, half hidden behind a lamppost, a figure stood perfectly still, too still, its posture identical to mine, its head tilted just slightly. A long, slow exhale fogged from its shape before the breeze scattered it. I blinked once, twice, and it vanished. No footprints, no shadow, just gone. I boarded the plane with my heart pounding against my ribs, knowing with absolute certainty that distance wouldn't matter. These things didn't follow roads. They didn't follow orders. They followed us. And somewhere on the Arctic plains, beneath the storm that never fully clears, I know the second convoy still waits. Silent, patient, perfect mirrors of the soldiers it chose to copy, ready to walk in our footsteps again the moment the snow begins to fall. If you've made it this far, remember this. Some missions don't end when the convoy returns. Some things follow. Some things learn. And somewhere out there, beyond the frozen plains and the last checkpoint lights, a second convoy is still moving, waiting for the next soldier to look back. If you want more wartime mysteries, real military encounters, and stories the reports never told, make sure you're subscribed. Until next time, stay sharp, stay aware, and whatever you do, don't answer when you hear your own voice calling from the snow.